Hey everybody, this is Emmy Thomas. I'm here with Adib. Adib, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody, which is, what is it like to be you?
What's it like to be me? I have Asperger's, which means that your brain is like an amplification, device in terms of what people say to you or, what environment you are, or just, how you can resonate with music or the things that you're doing or how much exertion of, physical energy, even thoughts, in terms of being obsessed with a particular subject area, or, what you're thinking, just physical and virtual, stimuli. Everything is, increased, emotions. That's kind of like the main area of Asperger's slash autism.
That's really interesting. I have heard, stuff like super sensitivity to things, but it's so interesting to hear you kind of say even the word amplification because it makes me think of music and sound because I also am a musician. And can you like say a little bit more about like what that feels like or like maybe give like an example?
I know I said a lot in the intro, but in terms of emotions, I know that some people, don't feel many emotions or limited, but we feel like maybe like all the emotions or multidimensional or something, right? We kind of feel happy or depressed, sad, relaxed, in awe, sometimes all at once, sometimes in a short, time span that we feel those emotions. So that's the emotional side, you
Hmm.
know.
And does that like
So
feel overwhelming to feel uh so many emotions in a small time?
yeah, it does feel overwhelming, especially if you're trying to, get some work done or you're in a social circle, because you're not very good with communicating with people or following social protocols, even just starting off when you're young, in terms of knowing when to like, stand up for yourself or how to uh, effectively talk to people, not be too relaxed, you know but also not like running around and crashing into people, which I was doing at least one middle school. So you can't be too passive, but you also can't do put yourself out there, you know, to the utmost. And those are the two things that I did in school. And it made school very difficult.
Like, do you mean actually physically running around and crashing into people?
Yes, there was one middle school that did it.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I think they say Asperger's is too many. I heard a scientist say it's extra wiring of the neurons, right?
Mm.
Some people will think other conditions are not enough wiring or IQ, but scientists characterized as too many connections starting when you were youthful. Mm.
So there's just like a lot going on in your mind, like at any moment. That's how it kind of feels to you.
Yeah, precisely. Whether you're like focused on something or you're scatterbrained. And like I said, with the emotional side, sometimes you can be focused on something. You can be focused and scatterbrained. It's just,
Mm.
uh, it's a lot to take in, you know.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think for people like listening, how especially it's funny, the last video I did, the guy was very, he said that he felt inconsistencies like like it was a terrible feeling to experience an inconsistency. And so let's like explore this just a little bit, how you can be both super focused and scatterbrained.
Mhm.
Like,
Super. You can be focused. It's hard to really say. You can be focused on something, and you feel like whatever you're focused on is leads to many different other things, like
mm,
the subject matter at hand, and then you have different secondary pieces of that. Like I'm supposed to be focused on this project, or this door, but um what about, I guess, the frame of the building? What about something that's sort of related, to this subject. Like, how did this come about, or basically the five whats, I guess, or wheres around, something. So it kind of is easy to divert into, other things because, you know, I guess it's things that are subjects that are related, you know.
What do you mean by the five whats?
Oh, what, where, who,
Oh,
why, and that's how you branch off into other things that you're thinking about. Whether a person is you're trying to answer questions on a test, or it's just you think about everything.
mm. That's interesting. So, I mean, does this kind of sound like authentically your experience? I'm just thinking and trying to think like what an analogy would be. Let's say like normal people are at like a 10, like they have 10, you know, of attention or intensity that they can kind of spend on something. And maybe you're at like a 20, you know. So a
Yeah,
normal
yeah, like
person, if they're totally
well,
focused, they have 10 out of 10 on that thing. But if you're totally focused, it's 20 out of 10, which explains why you're ultra focused. And
yeah, yeah.
then if you're scatterbrained, let's say you're 10 out of 10 or you're 10 out of 20 focused on something, but you still have another 10 stuff that's thinking other stuff, you know, that's like still, even though you're focused as much as a normal person would be, you still have all these 10 things, these other 10 things that are doing other things, you know, thinking about different related or unrelated things. Is that kind of how it feels?
Yeah, it does. It does tend to tie everything in together.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes social life difficult. I was bullied a lot, within school, with the school systems, and kids can be pretty, vicious, and you don't know when to stand up for yourself, and it's hard to form social connections and do well academically when you're cowering in the the um the outside area where people have lunch, and you gotta make sure that the bullies don't approach you, or you're scared in the classrooms or outside of the classrooms. And it's kind of a dark part in your life when kids bully you, right? I didn't really get much academia or really any social life because of it.
Hmm. Is there like now that you are like an adult, do you have like, is there like something that you wish would have happened or something that you wish you knew during that time period? Or are you kind of like that was just bound to happen?
um I think that was probably bound to happen in regular schools, because um, they weren't socially adapted to stopping bullying, which I think probably if it's not a human rights, or violation, it can be close to it when it comes to just the compounding bullying, daily harassment, stress. It can really get to a person. It can really start some unnatural habits. And because I was in high school I was supposed to be in class of 2013. So back in like 2010, there was nobody cared about, mental health or anything. I mean, goodness, the internet was new. It was
Yeah.
like, well, social media was like 4 years old. So,
Well, I actually
I hope
think,
it's better.
yeah, I actually think too that like 2007-ish to 2010 or 11 were kind of like the peak of like kind of meanness on the internet too. Like people were like all the celebrity gossip blogs were like, "Oh, Kim Kardashian, look how terrible she looked, you know, getting gas." And I'm like, "Geez, Louise, why is this just like?" And but I read it like during that time period. I was like, "Oh, let's keep up on kind of all the celebrities." I agree with you that that was like a period in which people kind of didn't seem to care about bullying or mental health issues. I actually think this is kind of funny for like multiple reasons, but I think it was like Cedric. Is it Cedric the Creator? Am I saying him right?
The
Tyler the
entertainer, I'm not
Creator, Cedric the
sure.
Entertainer, or Tyler the Creator. So it's Tyler the
Okay.
Creator, I think, was talking about like because Kim Kardashian complained about the online bullying, and he said something like in a tweet, he was like, online bullying, like what? That just look away from the screen. Like, how can you be bullied in cyberspace? But I think it's a really interesting question. Tyler, the creator, I think it was, who asked this question because I think there is some truth to it. Like you can kind of not engage. Obviously, not you when you're at school and you have to be at school, but like other people, uh, you can see how.
I think it's like the frame of mind of different people. Because me being 30, born in 95, I still remember at least 4 years of dial-up, where you were on the internet and someone you used to say, get off, I'm trying to have a phone call.
Yeah.
I think that's the new marker on whether you're young or not,
Mm,
But but the youth nowadays, I mean, they've always known smartphones, smart tech, everything. They
yeah.
always had a Kindle, or I don't think people, some might not even remember that, an iPad or
Yeah. And maybe people will have predicted that I'm about to say this. Like, if you look at young people, like the average young normal person, like I substitute taught in the year between undergraduate and law school, and teaching at the middle school was like crazy. Middle schoolers are like the meanest people that you'll ever know, probably, and like super cruel to even their friends. There's just like a cruelty that kind of underlies everything. They're cruel to their teachers, they're cruel to themselves, they're cruel to their friends. There's just like kind of this negativity and animosity that is a little bit nuts to see. But I think sometimes people are like, oh yeah, maybe that's a developmental stage, that's not reflective of normal people. But I'm like, guys, you guys all went through that, number one. And like, how can you justify it to yourself? Is it really a developmental stage? Because as you say, like, is it possible for kids to not feel that way about other people, to not bully other people? I think so, because the bullying seems to have lessened, so it's hard to kind of say that that was like somehow just a necessary part of humanity. But the way that it was tolerated, like during these time periods, and just kind of overlooked by students, by administrators in the school, by parents, where it was just like that's just a part of life, I think is perhaps even more than the fact that these middle schoolers were assholes, is the
and
way
high
that
school
that was
and high school.
tolerated, where it
Yeah.
was like that's just what's going to happen. And I remember going to high school in the 90s, late 90s, and or I guess like 90s, I started high school in the mid 90s, and I had an older brother too, and he was like, "Yeah, you're gonna get trash canned. All the freshmen get trash canned, which means just throwing somebody in a trash can for some reason." Like,
Mhm. And
and
yeah, it wasn't just about school. I think it was also in terms of, parents, because I
mm,
had an extremely overprotective, mom, and
mm,
she tries to control, what I watch or what I eat or who I go out with, when. She's always worrying about I'll get caught up in, the system, or, she'll. So it's tough when you have an extremely, overprotective, parent, growing up or even into adulthood, because it just takes away the motivation, to live. It takes away the agency, and it kind of takes away in terms of, responding, going through consequences,
yeah,
of life. It kind of just, deadens that,
interesting.
'cause,
Do
yeah.
you want to talk about that a little bit, like why you think your mom might have chosen to be overprotective like that to you?
Yeah. I think the main thing is, autism, or I had a slow development growing up. I mean, I probably wet the bed till I was 12, or something. So I guess slow developmental, stages like that. But also I think it might stem from, her background or some, mental health type thing. So it's like a combination, of the two. and kind of the more that um, what was said in Star Wars, the what did Leia say? The closer you tighten the hand, the more you let go through your fingers. I think
Hmm.
Leia said that to Vader. That's kind of applicable in terms of me not wanting uh, her cramping down and me, not taking either life serious or making more mistakes, because of the overprotection.
Yeah.
I think I heard that's the case in terms of spanking kids too, in terms of that. So it made things worse.
Like tell me more about the spanking thing. She
Oh no, no,
did or
I
didn't
was just
or
giving an example. I'm sorry, I was just giving an example. Well, in terms of that, I mean, yeah, yeah. Now that I mentioned that, kind of traumatized, autistic, child even more,
mm,
But I mean, she was. I don't think age matters really, but she was, born in like 50s, seven. But I mean, I think discipline is mostly discipline for the most part. I wouldn't say I was abused, but like I said, most parents, but yeah, yeah, I think the overprotection hurt me more than the discipline did,
that's
And Asperger's, I think when you overprotect someone with Asperger's, um, since they need stimuli, to be,
mm,
independent and confident of themselves. When you put so much, fear of police, fear of this, so much checklist of fear, you kind of hamper us, Aspie's desire to, flow outward or, mass assimilate things.
hmm.
What's Star Trek? But yeah,
It's interesting because I have a younger brother. He's like so much younger than me that he was born around the time that you must have been born, like just doing the math, like within a couple years, a few years. And it makes me wonder because he has the same complaint about our parents. We have the same parents that they were just so overprotective of him and he used this kind of too. You said something about like agency. He said that he felt like he was never even able to make a choice or to even understand what it meant to kind of make a real choice. And the example,
exactly. Just
yeah,
yeah.
the example he
Just the
gave,
passenger, just not a driver, but just the passenger on the ride. Yeah.
yeah, because I asked him, I was like, what do you mean, like, make a choice? Like, what choices would you have been making kind of as a child or something? And he said, he gave an example that uh, it was his our dad was going to Catalina Island, which is like an island you could take the ferry to go scuba diving and or snorkeling. So he could go do that, or he could go to kind of a lame Pioneer Day parade, which Pioneer Day is like celebrated amongst Mormon population in July. So this would have been like maybe like I don't know, 3 dozen people walking through a park dressed up as like old timey pioneers. And he said that he chose the Pioneer Day parade, but he kind of, the way he talked about it was more interesting than the choice itself. He was like, I just didn't have like the sense that, like even if I made a choice, that it would kind of make a difference or that the choice was going to be recognized or that the choice could lead to different kind of just the mechanism of choices he didn't understand that you choose one thing and it leads to one outcome, you choose another thing and it leads to another outcome, and just you just choose the one that you prefer. Kind of like he had been so robbed and so kind of sheltered and kind of kept like in a little bit of a bubble by my parents that he felt like he didn't understand choices, like he couldn't, like when given the actual opportunity to make a choice, he hadn't had enough practice doing it to really understand and feel comfortable. And I think he still feels that way even though he's like, however, like, in his 30s or whatever. He chose to go like on a Mormon mission, even though he didn't really choose it. And then while he was on the mission, he like chose to like not tell anybody he was having a mental breakdown. And then like, like he
Or it
he
could
made
be.
all these weird choices where it was kind of like uh like I kind of noticed. I was like, why'd you choose to have that major, in university? And then he chose like a different thing to get a master's degree in. And the master's degree, I think it's just because one of his professors was like, like, hey, if you applied to get a master's, then we would accept you. And he's like, oh, okay, so I'll just do this. He
Or
doesn't like use either degree currently in his job. Like it was never like never seemed like it was coming from him. You know what I'm saying?
I see what you mean. Or it could be, everyday things like hanging out with friends or field trip or, just going different places and, things like that. Regular stuff or decisions in your life. And I feel that, definitely hurts, and I was gonna think about oh yes, college.
Mm.
So my whole education, I kind of because of the bullying, I didn't really get much education. I did maybe third grade in elementary, then fifth grade, then sixth grade in like three different schools. Most of these, all of them were bullying, shoot. And then I would skip to ninth grade.
Huh.
Um, and I went to two different high schools. The first high school was good, but I acted like a fool. I was actually class president. I did a speech. They called me Obama and everything, but I messed it up. I over tried and tried to be the cool kid, and then that's when the bullying came. And it was in the hood, but it was a fairly disciplined school. And then I transferred to another school, somewhat up north, but it had a lot of hood elements, and the bullying was like 1,000 times worse. So
Uh,
I never could get a baseline of like, education. So I got my GED, and then I went to Atlanta Tech. I tried information technology, specifically network engineering around
yeah.
2012, but um, I couldn't really get some of the programmable or the logic. It's not full program like network devices, but in terms of some of the complex logic, I just couldn't penetrate the complicated elements of it because I didn't really have much left. I never exercised my left side of the brain.
Huh.
And even though I got a 3.43 GPA, and I didn't even complete ninth grade math. So that's a huge dichotomy that kind of drives you crazy, because Atlanta Tech was mostly remedial math. And yeah, I didn't complete ninth grade math, but I have an associate's degree in information technology.
Huh.
So that alone led to depression that I probably was not going to be good in the field. So that kind of made me sad. I tried again at a year up. I don't know if you've heard of that program. They top Forbes 500 IT companies. They train youngsters. I stupidly chose computer programming after I couldn't even do network, engineering with routers. I tried Java. I just see. I just don't learn from my mistakes. What I don't know whether it's me. I have to take some responsibility or being overprotected. And yeah, I failed Java miserably. Java, JavaScript, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So it's like a spotty educational, record.
Yeah. When you say like you said that you did like first grade or third grade, whatever the grades were, did you just like have some years where you weren't at school at all?
Homeschool, yes,
Oh,
yes.
homeschool.
Homeschooling, which was because of the overprotective parent, homeschooling can be I was isolated. So
Hmm.
I've learned in homeschool, you're supposed to have groups ideally,
Mm.
but when it's just you and overprotective parent, it's kind of, limiting, kind of leads to some fighting later on, verbal, and she kind of ran out of stuff to teach me because she has an associate's degree. She doesn't have a background as an educator. She
Yeah.
did a little bit of real estate when I was young. So by no means she could, teach a curriculum.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. And we didn't have anything online because I don't think they had that many resources,
Yeah.
online. And, she wasn't of the age to mesh well with with digital stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Can I ask you, do you have older siblings?
Older siblings. Matter of fact, I used to say that I didn't have any siblings, but I'm starting to claim them. I actually met one, and I never. So basically, my dad's side of the family's from Bermuda,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't really see many of them. I have a brother and a sister um, that are 40, that no, that are 45 and 50 years old,
Huh.
you know. So I met my brother last October. I actually have
Nice.
a yeah, I actually have a niece that is 8 months older than me.
That's
So
kind of
yeah,
funny.
no, that's that's great.
But you're
But
your mom's only child?
correct, yes.
Yeah, so she was kind of older, a little older. I mean, that would have been the same with my mom when she had my little brother. Is like a little bit older than most moms of other kids his age. Does that
Yeah,
sound
I
right?
think yeah, I think when it comes to maybe I saw something in science, I don't know, something about the mental health of, well, I think it was genetic, but I think also the mental health of parents, it could, that and being of older age,
Yeah.
can kind of not be the best, the,
Yeah.
the most effective combination. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. And it's interesting too because like my mom was so overprotective of my little brother. So I was like in law school when he was like, I don't know, maybe like in high school or something. And I would go on vacation sometimes with them because the rest of my siblings were like married or, kind of busy. But I'd be like, oh, summers, I have the summers off. I'll go on whatever vacation. You guys are going to Hawaii, I'll come with. So often it would be just my little brother and me on vacation with them because he was still like in the house. And I'd talk to him about all sorts of stuff like, hey, what have you thought about school? And, I'd teach him things about like, because at that time, especially, I had gotten really interested in personal finances. So I talked to him about like, different investment things. And she told me, she was like, Jamie, don't talk to him about that sort of stuff. You're going to put all sorts of weird ideas in his head about like, money and all these other things. And I was like, money's not a weird idea. Money's just a life skill, but she really was like so kind of like wanted to be in control of even what he was exposed to ideologically, even about something like personal finance. Like I think about that often now, like what because his can you guess it? His money skills are poor.
Oh, I see.
Like he's basically the opposite of me, like in when it comes to kind of competence with finances. Or I mean, he just kind of like he he could have been like educated and maybe my mom could have said, like, oh, he's only whatever age, but I'm like, whoa, at what age do you want to start learning about money? He has money, you give him an allowance. Like there's nothing inherently evil or wrong about money. Like there's no reason to shield him from the concept of money. Like it was just kind of like a really weird thing. And I think now about it because it's like, do my parents feel like that was successful? But the truth is, she probably doesn't even remember, telling me like, don't stop talking to him about money, and she was really kind of like mean to me about it. And I was like surprised, but like, fine, I won't, whatever. I can talk to him about his video games instead, if that's like what you prefer. But she too, I think she had like this like kind of weird controlling mindset because she's about the video games. She would be like, "Oh, if I knew then what I know now about video games, I never would have let him play video games either." And I'm like, yeah, you probably would have never let him do anything.
And
Like
I'm glad
it's,
you,
hmm,
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned
yeah,
the obsessions. I used to be obsessed with, um, first thing was NASCAR
mm,
as being an autistic, person, but then my brother kind of crushed that in '06 and said, well, there's not that many, blacks in NASCAR or whatever. And, the next thing was space.
mm,
I loved, watching about, astronomy or the planets or, things to do with science. I remember I was in a school and the teacher said, "What do you think about in your spare time?" And I wrote a 17-page, thing about the planets, about the solar system. It was a middle school. And yeah, I just feel like, that commitment when I was, obsessed with all things, astronomy and then that later turned into war and conflict, maybe looking at the conflict within, I don't know, but that later turned into, war and stuff, so it's different things. We need containers of things to obsess, over, science or current events. And yeah, things is just it's just the obsession. They call it an addictive personality, like it's a part of that in terms of obsession,
Mm,
addictive personality. OCD, all of that is integrated, within autism.
interesting. What is your current obsession?
Uh, I don't want to introduce this like this. Anyway, no, I don't. What
Yeah.
current obsession? I don't know. It's maybe um, sometimes I'm obsessed with the past. Like that's, I guess, what my mom will say about things that failed in my life. So maybe some spare internet trolling. I don't know. It just used to be, productive. You know, even IT was, I guess, of, somewhat of an obsession, even though I didn't know about it. So I just, even up to, this point, I never got over the sadness that I had of, information technology, right? Because I was tutoring and helping other people. I felt smart, even with the basic stuff. It was too basic, but I didn't really, regard it as such. But then when things got more complicated outside the classroom or in real life, I started to live through, like, flowers for Algernon or something that my effective, interpretation of the complexity. And I was just, I think I've never really gotten over that. I've never really mentioned that until this interview to really anybody or that many people. And so it kind of saddened me. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but you know, maybe that's why I tried it again. I guess. I guess because it's the only thing I did academic really because of spotty thing. So I guess it kind of fits into that.
What do you mean the flowers for Algernon? I think I know what
Oh,
you
I think it
mean,
was
but
it was a book. I didn't read it, but I read the synopsis. It was like this dude who he was dumb, then he got smart, and then his IQ lessened again. I don't really know. I think I read a Cliff Notes version, but I didn't read the full book. But and it kind of was pain. So I guess I guess picture Sheldon and Forrest Gump combined in some form or fashion.
mhm.
So that's what
But
it kind of.
that's what it felt like to you with the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what it felt like to me. Sorry, I was busy. But yeah, yeah.
uh-huh. But like what about it? Because you were so competent at the in the first kind of beginning basic classes and then like it's as if like it like
Yeah, the learning curve it was very steep, very parabolic. It was in terms of, the real world and other skills you need to have that aren't even anywhere near the realm of what you know, plus more of, what you're studying. And it's just, complex and problem solving. And yeah, I wasn't really taught um, both in Atlanta Tech, because some of the IT program, a little, and just in my education life, I wasn't taught really much to problem solve. And I
hmm,
think Eli, the computer guy, he was an influencer. He said, if you're not a problem solver, you need to get out. So
yeah. That is interesting. That's true. One of my brothers does kind of like he did this before his current profession, like tech support or whatever. And so he's like the one that we go to with our problems. Like, can you look at my laptop? Like it won't connect to my printer or whatever. Like, and sometimes he'll fix it and I'll be like, what was the problem? And he's like, I'm not sure. I tried, I reinstalled the drivers, I did this, I restarted, like, well, tell me all the kind of things and then be like, and then it just worked or whatever. And so I'm not sure. And I think that's kind of interesting because I think there aren't really certainties in like tech support. Like it's just like who knows why the problem happened and who knows why it got fixed. I think is like the answer like 80% of the time is my understanding like with things. There was like one time my parents have like a projector instead of a TV in like their like family room area. And it worked well for everything, but for the Blu-ray disc player, like this was like a decade or two ago, like it was like a pink screen, like all the colors were messed up. And like I think my brother spent like, like maybe like 5, 6 hours or something trying to figure out. And he kept saying he was like, there's a problem with the handshake between the Blu-ray player and the projector. And I thought that's such an interesting way to kind of think about it, that there's just like a messed up handshake. Like it kind of like speaks to like our human experience too, like when there's Blu-ray or in a projector that just can't handshake correctly enough such that there's not like some weird result pink screen. But I think he was like, we just need to get a new Blu-ray player. And there was
Yeah, when it
nothing
comes,
wrung with the Blu-ray player. It was just the
Mhm.
combination of that and the projector was the thing.
I got involved in the IT because people, well, first of all, um, I got involved because people would say I'm smart, whether positively or negatively or nice, nasty or whatever. You know, they would say that, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm nerdy, I'm smart, maybe I'll be good with computers. Like it was kind of like a false hope. I don't think I was ever really involved, happy, I never wanted to really do computers. I tried HTML and CSS when I was young. Oh, I forgot about it. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I remember actually the first course in college was Microsoft Access, and I hated it. Like it was the first semester, but oh, I'll be a network engineer, even though I hate the whole Microsoft Access relational database. But I just pushed it to the far reaches of my brain, like struggled through it. Yeah, I got struggled. Yeah, in IT, you mentioned Excel, when you do just a little thing like stop the font from deleting itself,
Yeah.
when you type in or whatever small little change. They think you're genius. They're like, oh, I mean, you're Steve Wozniak, you're Linus Torvalds, man. And I just did a little tinkering, but
Yeah,
hey, yeah.
that's interesting. It's interesting kind of like this to make it about me. We don't have to make it about me, but I've been thinking about this a little bit with my own self, like this flowers for Algernon sort of feeling, because I feel this currently like 3 out of 10. I have a little bit of a flowers for Algernon feeling. And I think it's because my mental capacity is diminishing and part of me really accepts it. And it's just like, like that's just the way things are. And you still have a great life or whatever, like there's no need for there to be a constant success, I guess, with me and particular things. Like it's okay to fail. Like part of me like can understand that and think, yeah, that totally makes sense that it's okay to fail. The other part of me doesn't like that in like a way that kind of makes it like uncomfortable to be like I am up against certain things that I don't think that I can do. And the weird part about it, and this seems kind of true to you too, is it's not like the things that I am failing at are things that are necessary. Like you didn't have to study network systems, you know? Like I'm
Yeah.
sure you would succeed at something else. And I'm like, why am I setting myself up kind of for failure too? And why am I kind of being sad about this to fail at things that don't really affect my life, are just basically things like that I don't even care about, but just the fact that I know that I can't do them or can't do them anymore can be kind of a little bit uncomfortable for me. Does it sound like we are having a similar experience there, at least a little bit?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I think one of the main areas I wanted to, talk about that has been in in addiction. I think um I'm kind of in a public library, but no, but I'm in the I reserved a closed
Mm,
room. But
nice.
yeah, one part of my life in terms of an addiction, unfortunately, would be um, imagery. They call it corn or whatnot. So basically, all the trauma instances of my life were, my mom overprotection and the crossing of boundaries
Mm,
uh, within my life. It's kind of always felt, um, emotionally invasive or emotional incest, but can't really use that word on like social media or whatever, or, Clubhouse. People think, what the heck, when they hear the second word. But that's kind of, unfortunately, the high degree of overprotection. And then you have the kids bullying me in
mm,
school. And then you already had the intense stimuli of sometimes I would have panic attacks, shortness of breath, or what I thought, was shortness of breath. Sometimes my muscles ached. Sometimes I would just vomit when I ate strawberries, just, all types of different feelings, and yeah, all of that just made me emotionally, I guess, unwell, so sometimes I would do what's it called? Shubaru. I think it's like meditation with ropes, or something, you know, uh, the layman's terms would be the, not nodding or tying oneself up. And that was one of my main escapes when I was young, when
mm.
I was but a small boy. And, I didn't do that out of any, horniness or anything like that. But it was, protection, for me, I guess. And, like all things, hell is paved, with good intentions.
Yeah.
So even though I was doing that to help myself, um, um, to save myself from all those other problems, um, you know, parents definitely should watch, what their children, are watching, because autistic people and our focus, we interpret things deeper than other people,
Mm,
so I don't know how much so there was this movie that I saw, okay, and this movie that I saw on Comcast when I was young. It was I think it was Saw, that's what it was.
mm.
I didn't just watch one, I watched two, and I watched three, and you know yeah, that that was not good. That was, yeah, they didn't know what parental controls, were. Not
Yeah.
many people do, especially back then. So I think that's when my addiction to, corn, started. Um, and it's kind of been tough because it takes, so much energy in terms of being autistic. But yeah, if you
When,
wanted to say anything or
yeah. When you say corn, corn, is that what you're saying? It's like CORN?
porn.
Oh, your
Uh,
addiction to porn. I kept hearing corn. I'm sorry,
That, that,
Adib.
that's what people say on the net if you're in TikTok or a sensitive thing place that wants.
Oh.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
I'm not in
yeah.
these sensitive places.
I'm trying to save your algorithm. No, I don't.
Yeah. No, I don't care about the
Yeah.
algorithm.
Okay, I just
I
feel
care
sensitive.
about you, Adib.
Okay, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's when it started.
Mm,
So I kind of used the term. I was on some podcast that, yeah, virtual, molestation. I think I used that terminology, because, I guess the human brain is not used to defending attacks, of this sexual nature on a screen,
mm,
basically sourced from yourself because you're inputting it, so that can make it a maybe different. I don't want to say worse, but I think it can make it radically different than the physical type, because it's all, coming from you, unfortunately.
Can you back up and like unpack that a little bit more? You said you used what phrase? Virtual molestation or something? Or what was the
Yeah,
word?
yeah, that was the term I used in
Yeah.
one part. Yeah, yeah.
And what does it kind of mean though? Can you like so you feel like you in kind of is I'm gonna throw out a couple ideas because I don't want to make it sound any
Okay.
particular way. Is it kind of like the molestation is happening to you, but it's like self kind of inflicted because you're like, providing your brain these different images and kind of
Yeah, yeah,
okay, so that's what it is. And then you kind of it sounds like well, kind of my guess with this is like with the word molestation, I think that like some of its key attributes are that it is like an objectification of a body.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like something like you're no longer treating the person, the body as like this whole person, but you're kind of treating it as like this thing that is like a sexual object that is meant for sexual gratification. And I think that is kind of where like the harm tends to come from, like any type of molestation. Is that why you chose that word?
yes, yeah. I think it's kind of invading, or exposing, to content that, either someone's, not ready for, or a violation.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, that would be the proper term. I think it's probably much more real than, virtual bullying, and
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
that has
Yeah.
a lot of people to
Tyler,
it.
the creator. Yep. But what is can you talk a little bit about like how does it feel violative to you? How does it feel like a violation to you?
Maybe not to an adult, but since I was probably 14 when I
Uh,
started, I think that, because you're not, I mean, heck,
yeah,
being autistic, you're kind of younger in the brain already, and I
sure.
didn't really know much social cues. So, you know, so yeah, I'm just totally not ready for even basic communication, let alone I could barely hold a conversation with a friend,
Yeah.
and I'm already watching some, the deeper end of the of porn,
Uh-huh.
with me being on the deeper end of the spectrum. So it's not, it's like bleach and gasoline. It,
Is that what happens when you add bleach and gasoline?
it explodes. Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know these things.
You don't know. It's, yeah, it's
I
not
never
good.
learned
Not good.
that in my formal education or any of the other educations. Um, so this is so you feel kind of like this is a burden that you've had basically since you were 14.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say, emotionally and sexually. I think, everyone else is like a car battery.
Uh-huh.
That the ampage on a car battery is not enough, to kill you, it's to shock you. But for us autistic people, it's like we're what the third rail on a subway,
Yeah.
like 750 volts at 10,000 amps. Like that's what it's like in terms of being autistic. Put it in a power ratio. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of, addiction. It's a lot of, horniness. And it's hard to, control it,
Uh,
or especially when you're not taught, or you never brought it up until like the 2 years ago or so.
uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah. And I don't know. Uh but you wanted to talk to me about it, kind of why? What did
Oh, and in terms of just, autistic, for parents to, I guess, look out for, or what
oh,
people content their kids watch, and stuff of that nature,
I see.
and some parents won't even think that. May I hate to say it, but maybe some parents would think that because a kid is special, he's not gonna be interested in sex. Basically, they thinking everything is slow. Like I
Yeah.
said in the beginning, autistic people have too many connections,
Yeah.
not what some people might think not enough. So they might think that on everything, including sex, when it's really too much. It's really we're too dense,
Interesting.
and just beware of what they're watching. It will be a little easier because a lot of the parents now that they're now that people my age are 30 and maybe 40, today's 40-year-olds, that they're more adept with the internet,
Yeah.
so hopefully they're already doing it, they, because
So,
it wastes a lot of time and energy.
yeah. And you feel that. You feel like it wastes a lot of time and energy.
Yeah, yeah, it feels, but at the same time, your body is turned into a drug. It's like your body is, liquid cocaine. The It's like an autoimmune drug or an auto drug because the chemicals in your own body, is like you
Huh.
feel anxious. That feels like it's liquid cocaine. You feel you really want to, um, you know, help yourself out or whatever. That feels like, sugar, or it feels like you're thirsty, or something like that. So it just your own body is like chemicals, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
Do you
yeah.
know the musician Sly Stone? No.
I
Sly and the
heard of his
Family
name,
Stone.
but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I just recently watched his documentary, I guess, on Hulu.
Mhm.
And do you know George Clinton from Parliament, the funk musician?
No,
No, that's okay.
I'm thinking of the two presidents now. No.
Oh yeah. Yep. So George Clinton says, like, yeah, we were crackheads about him and Sly in this like biography. And then he was like, because crack, basically, he was saying at the introduction of crack, or the popularity of crack, he was like, it was just such a great high, and he said it felt like you were nutting, is what George Clinton said. Yeah, but I can totally see it, like if that's what people are trying to kind of achieve, in their drug use. Uh that's really interesting. Do you think that like if you could choose to have, to be normal, like if you could snap your finger and have like a normal kind of like no porn addiction and just kind of like whatever normal sexual things are, would you do it?
I
Or
mean, it's hard to. I mean, we don't know what normal is. I guess, it's kind of
hmm
hard. Like someone not has never seen before. It's like when you never experience normality, it's hard to, want it in a way, and that's just, part of it. But yeah, I'm glad you said it feels like a high
yeah,
because, that's it, it's incredible amount of, highness that you feel, not just the brain, but it's also coming from all the chemicals, all the what they call chakras or nerve endings in your entire body. And, it's a full body immersive drug, that yeah.
it's interesting too because it's like one of these addictions that I feel like there's not really even a good kind of understanding of, or even like a good acknowledgement of what's happening. Like I feel like it's a little bit like like a gambling addiction or something, where people are like, what does that really mean to be addicted to gambling or something, where it's not like taken seriously as much as like an addiction to like a hard drug would be. Oh, you're a heroin addict. Oh, okay. We understand that. Like we have like a box to kind of put you in and to kind of think about you. And we have like these tools that you can use. But like, I don't even know. Are there any kind of like tools or whatever kind of well-known tools that people use for porn addiction?
I think they're debating whether it's an addiction or not because it's like worse than weed because it varies so much from person to person,
I see.
and I don't even think they have a lot of neurotypical people talking about porn addiction. Because
Yeah.
when I went on Google, and unfortunately, I typed the words, autism and what porn addiction, CP comes up, and it's like, oh dear. Yeah, it's like so. There's not a lot of resources combining
What is CP comes up? What is CP?
child, and then
Oh,
yeah.
that's
So
crazy. Okay,
there's
thank
a
you
lot
for
of
explaining all
extreme.
these things to me. I'm sorry, I'm too
I'm
old to
give
get these
I'm giving the
references.
abbreviation. That's
Yeah.
something else. That's something also when we don't want to say that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we say that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
That's
it's not a
interesting.
lot of it's barely
No.
any resources at all. And I just want to, I was going to say the platform I was on
Hmm.
is about 2 years ago, Soft White, Underbelly.
Yeah.
And, I think right now I amassed 200, what, 80, thousand in terms of views, and, I hope I helped the autistic, community,
Yeah.
well. And around that time, I had I had a small amount of money that I inherited, somewhat small,
Uh-huh.
and I discovered Clubhouse, a social audio app. And
Okay.
I wasn't on social media since 2015, right? And the combination of all of those particular three things, this is about in fall of 2022. I kind of I felt sky high, and then I completely crashed, far lower than what I was. I was trying to do entrepreneurship. I was trying to speak on Clubhouse, and it was a social audio app. I was trying to be the personality, I guess, because I always loved radio.
Uh,
And my mom was still visiting me, even though I lived in a different apartment. And even when I had a job, she said, "Well, why are you wasting time on a job?" And then kind of the money trickled out, and it's just uh, if you don't get help for your mental problems, there was no amount, I don't think, of money
yeah.
or of wishing what you want to do, or trying hard. You have to get help for your mental problems,
Yeah.
and maybe, I hate to say it, but maybe having a tiny dashing of a savior complex, reaching all those people, that's not going to that's probably not going to help. You need professional, help, because I thought that was the highest moment of my life, and it was. Keyword on moment, because
Uh, uh,
afterwards it was like, you know, like a
interesting.
falling airship in terms of hydrogen. That's
Yeah.
what it felt like.
That is such like a truth, I think, that you said that. I think a lot of people, I'm glad that you said it. And I think it's so important that it's kind of, it is true. No amount of money is going to help you ultimately unless you start working on your mental health issues. Like the money, like did the money actually help? The money probably just postponed maybe some of the pain
Yeah,
points.
it postponed. I still stayed in the same mind frame. My mom was coming over because she was worried about me, or she wanted to clean the place. So I didn't really change any important thing in my life. And
Huh.
I think that mostly it comes from mental health, I guess. Not saying that you can't do it without money, but I think the mental health is kind of clear thing that you have to focus on. So I would then felt like I would crash harder than I had risen up, and it's just I shouldn't have gotten on Clubhouse on social audio. I think that might have been the least, seemingly least, but the most, because I stopped in 2015. I stopped Facebook because I was talking to 100 different people, and I only knew like one of them, my childhood friend Josh from high school. So, but social audio, and of course, it's more immersive than Facebook. You can hear people,
Yeah.
and I just took an incredible liking to that, and um, yeah, I probably wish I didn't find Clubhouse,
So
social
you
audio.
put all 20 of your little attention things onto Clubhouse, and is that what you're kind of saying? You hyper focused on it?
No, I was trying entrepreneur, but I also was doing a lot of, Clubhouse. I was
Uh-huh.
talking about my life in Clubhouse. I was talking about other topics in Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And, I tried to do exercise, like maybe run 5Ks, but I always felt like I had tunnel vision. Like I'm focused even if I'm not focused on something. So this ghost focusing thing combined with depression and, that 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 yeah, that kind of hurt basically.
Yeah. This is really interesting. Uh, I have kind of like two thoughts. I have like a thought about kind of like saying really clearly what you for the people, the parents of autistic kids or whatever, like what do you think is like the way that they should speak to their kids about sex, about how to be careful about sex and like the unique or porn, like their sexual identity, let's say, their sexual expression, like as they come into puberty, like what do you wish somebody had told you, given your proclivity to kind of hyper focus, obsession, and the fact that you, as you said, kind of everything is just amplified so much by your disorder.
I think one thing is that you don't need to be physically, sexually, violated for it to be affected sexually. All things in terms of your peers, classmates, relationships with their parent, if they're, emotionally or by other means, emotionally, psychologically inappropriate, even and especially imagery on, the TV or screen. The horror movie Saw, it was about, traps and, different contortionists or restraints or restrictions. That was about the movie Saw. So when that it was like, like a
I see.
symbiote, like Spider-Man 3 or something into my, if you
Uh-huh.
remember what I did with, with rope to help
Yeah.
my chakras, to help my, meditation. It turned me into, Venom or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were using Spider-Man ad libs, but yeah,
Uh,
that's so it's the reflection in terms of that. But just any stress can hurt the sexual, emotional core.
yeah. Yeah. And so just to be kind of you would say like you wish that somebody would have said, like be careful, like this is especially vulnerable.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, say it again.
So you wish that somebody had told you this is like a vulnerable aspect of your identity and to be careful with it. By the way, do we have to wrap up or something? Do you have to take
No,
off? Okay.
no. Well, I'm almost pretty much done. Is
Oh,
it?
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what were you gonna ask?
Oh, like so the thing that you wish that somebody had told you when you were a child was, like Adib, be careful with this. Like be careful what media you watch, be careful what you kind of introduce to your mind because these things can hurt you even though they're not a physical molestation. There can still be a virtual molestation of your mind and in ways that will harm you and kind of distort the way that you view yourself and your sexual identity. Is that kind of what you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. I don't think it's too much of my parents' age, but unfortunately, well, it's something I believe my parents should have done when I was extremely, type, probably younger, I would say.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah.
And you said you want to kind of wrap up or something?
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
gonna wrap up, but yeah, but
Okay.
thanks.
Yeah, go ahead. So do you have any like parting thoughts?
I think I pretty much said it. I think I
Okay.
did.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been so interesting. I think that it's such a good insight and this idea of like, the ability to amplify being applied to these particular circumstances is really interesting. So I really appreciate you and hopefully we can chat in the future too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.